Good evening and welcome to the Monday, July 17th, 2017 Board of Commissioner meeting. The Reverend Susan Fitch Slater has been kind enough to come and lead us in the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all stand.
Thank you. Let us pray. Gracious God, you are a God of compassion and justice and liberty. There is nothing that exists that was not spoken first by you. And so as we gather this night, we thank you for this good land in which you have given us to live and to establish ourselves and to establish the generations that will follow after us. We pray your presence tonight, that the business that is conducted, the decisions that are made, are in accordance to what you have spoken for us in such a time as this. I pray for those who stand before us as leaders, that you would give to them counsel, discernment, holy boldness, and faith, that they would be true to the calling and the responsibilities that you have placed upon them. Allow us all to do the things that is required of us by your word, mainly that we would do justice, that we would love mercy, and that we would walk humbly with you. These things we ask in the name of Christ our Lord. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Reverend Slater, thank you. Our first item this evening is approval of the agenda. I do have one change. I move that the board enter closed session pursuant to GS 143-318-11A3 to consult with county attorney and in order to preserve county attorney privilege. And I would put that at the end of our agenda.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to our next item would be public comment. We have several people signed up for public comment this evening. If you could keep your comments to 3 minutes. The red light will tell you when your time is up. And please keep as close to that as possible. I appreciate it, as does the board. If I can call Josh Bass. Please state your name and your address for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Josh Bass at 103 Egret Cove, Moyock, North Carolina, and I also serve as the president of the Currituck Chamber of Commerce. I'm here to address Sunday alcohol sales and the proposed change before you this evening and the change that the state made. We at the Chamber have always viewed Sunday alcohol sales as an unnecessary government regulation, one that the state needed to fix, which they have now, and which comes before you this evening as a local body. We hope that you will take a look at that and lift this local regulation and allow our businesses to choose whether they open at 10 o'clock and serve or not. Noon sales on Sundays put our businesses at a competitive disadvantage with restaurants in Virginia, golf courses in Virginia, neighbors to the north that can serve at 9 o'clock right now. And, of course, to the south, you're seeing the Dare County towns, and the county is hearing this as well tonight, that we expect Dare County to pass this as well. So we want our restaurants and golf courses to be able to compete with those in Virginia and Dare County. Again, you have golf courses in this county that open at 7 o'clock on Sundays. People finish their round by about 10:30. We have wineries and breweries that are losing customers who are leaving the beach early Sunday, and they've already gone by them, and they can't buy anything to take home to Pennsylvania or Ohio or wherever they may reside. We have restaurants that would like to start serving brunch, but they need a profit center. in this. And again, they're serving our visitors. We want to make it a great visitor experience for these folks so that they can go get brunch after a long drive, check into their house right after that. We have grocery stores, again, that will be put at a competitive disadvantage with sales in Virginia and Dare County. We have a marina we have several marinas that have boats going through the intercoastal waterway that are buying supplies that they're stocking up for several days, and they're missing those Sunday morning sales. So we really feel like this will help a lot of our businesses, not just one industry, but several. This is already on the books in 47 other states, and there's no data that this affects public safety, but it does hurt our local businesses. Thank you for your consideration this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. Dave Knock.
My name's Dave Knock. I live at 573 Hump Club Drive, Corolla, North Carolina, and here to speak out tonight on two issues. First, I'd like to pass out some pictures to you. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. First picture's there is of my new golf cart. Second picture's there of my grandchildren, and the third picture there is of my wife. Well, two items or decisions you all made recently related to the Southern Beach access have had a direct impact on my family. One was the parking along the beach access road, where I've been doing that for 15 years. My golf cart, I no longer can park there. The second issue is you terminated the agreement with the Currituck Club Homeowners Association related to the carrying of handicap and people down to the beach. These two items can have a positive or a negative impact on anybody. And of course, they had a negative impact on my family, and I would hope that you would reconsider it when you discuss the Southern Beach access at your next meeting. There's definitely a need for additional parking down there. If you've all reviewed any of the pictures I've forwarded over to you, there's very much some safety issues there at that parking lot, and I would hope you would continue to try to find additional locations for parking in that area, both for golf carts and for vehicles. The second item I want to mention to you is the formation of the Corolla Neighborhood PAC, Political Action Committee, which I'm now the coordinator for. The membership's starting to grow, and the idea behind this is, as an individual, I was getting nowhere in discussing issues with you all, especially the event house. So I said, well, maybe I need an organization, and that's what I'm attempting to formulate. The issues we're going to continue to bring in front of you all would be event house and changing the UDO on event houses, and the manner that you look at them. They need to be looked at as commercial facilities. The second item we're going to be pushing in front of you is the multi-use path, to finish off that path as soon as possible. All the issues I'm discussing are safety issues. I'd like to see you all get that done as soon as possible. And then, of course, the Southern Beach access. We would hope you'd look at it again. And I thank you for your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Knock. Matthew Paulson.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Paulson, and I am the owner and operator of First Light Breakfast and Burgers. We are located in the Timbuktu Shopping Center in Corolla, although my residence is in Gill Devil Hills. Thank you for taking the time to hear my thoughts on this matter, as in Sunday alcohol sales. Knowing this vote was going to occur today, I spent a little time Sunday speaking to my customers and handing out a brief questionnaire that I had prepared for those who attempted to order an alcoholic beverage between the hours of 10 a.m. and 12 noon. I limited it to these hours in questions to give me a true representation of the effects of this ordinance. I hope to show the commissioners several things. First, these are vacationers, and Sunday is a turnover day. Many of them have just arrived and are awaiting entry into their vacation homes. This may be the first time they've seen family members in months, and often like to celebrate the beginning of their vacation with a Bloody Mary or a mimosa. I also hope to show that these are not kids. We are talking about responsible adults who are starting or finishing a vacation and would like the opportunity to choose for themselves whether or not to have an alcoholic beverage. Over the 2-hour period that is up for discussion, I had 46 customers who responded to my questionnaire after having attempted to order an alcoholic beverage. I had asked my servers to tell me what tables attempted to order alcoholic beverages so that I could ask them to fill out this questionnaire. The respondents had an average age of 42.17 years old. The overwhelming attitude was that this was a meal with family, and they were on a long-awaited beach vacation, and they wanted to choose what they drank. Most of the respondents came from states far away, spending many hours in the car traveling to our community for their vacation. We do everything we can to make sure they have a great trip and continue to visit our community. The County Tourism Board spends a lot of time and money getting these tourists to our beach, and our community very much depends on the seasonal revenue generated by serving them. The opportunity to responsibly grow businesses and revenue, helping members of the community by increasing work hours and wages through tips. Businesses will have the increased opportunity to prosper, and sales tax revenue will increase. Thus, the community will benefit. Also, our visitors will have a more enjoyable experience, possibly increasing the likelihood of them returning. I ask you to vote in favor of an ordinance that allows the brunch bill to take effect in Currituck County. Thank you. And I also have the surveys. Nothing formal. I'd like to at least give them to the board so that they can read them. I've highlighted some things that I thought were important. And
Thank you, Mr. Paulson.
thank you all for your time.
John Wright.
Commissioners, thank you for having me. My name is John Wright, lifelong resident of Currituck, current resident of Powell's Point, and apologize for my appearance. I keep farm hours during the growing season, so I came right out of the vineyard to be here. As a business that's growing, literally and figuratively here in Currituck County, this does impact us at the vineyards and winery. I was asked by a couple commissioners, what impact does this have on you? I get a lot of vehicles that come up to the winery between the hours of 10 a.m. and noon. Now, clearly, we're closed. That's the law currently, so we leave a closed sign up. But I did take the time the other morning to look. I think about a dozen cars came in and left. We do lose sales by not having the ability to sell beverages between that time frame. For us, we don't sell open beverages. We're just selling closed bottles of wine. And most of the folks that are visiting us on a Sunday morning are leaving the beach. They did not get to see us on the way in. They were going to the Golden Goose of Corolla too quickly to stop, and we're their last chance to get that sale of locally produced and bottled wine to them. So I see great benefit between the hours of 10 and 12 to sell a Currituck grown and raised product that benefits our community and grows the tax base as well. So I'd appreciate your vote to open up the hours of 10 and noon for the brunch bill. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Manley West.
My name is Manley West. I live at 2658 Currituck Highway, and I, like John Wright, am a lifelong member. I've farmed on a farm that's been in our family since the Revolutionary War that we were proud of. But I sent each of you an email voicing my concerns and my opinion, and I would just like to restate that for you tonight. As you consider the ordinance to allow the sale of malt beverages, unfortified wine, fortified wine, and mixed beverages on Sunday beginning at 10 a.m., let me encourage you to not approve such ordinance. I could not begin to provide all the statistics that prove the perils of drinking, the hardships it causes families, and the many reported deaths caused by those who drive after having been drinking alcohol. We are not going to stop the sale of alcohol, but let's not take an action that will further encourage its consumption. You began your meeting tonight with a prayer for guidance and wisdom from the Lord. I applaud you for that. I hope that in a world that we have seen deteriorate, you will recognize the need to honor the hours of weekly worship. As a final thought, is the increased sale of 2 hours, 1 day a week, worth the hardships it may create. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. West. Currently, that's all I have signed up for public comment. Does anyone else in the audience like to speak? And with that, I will close the public comment and open the floor for a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Got ahead of myself. Too much coffee this afternoon. Next item on our agenda is public hearing and action PB 1704, Currituck County, the 2017 housekeeping amendment to modify and correct the United Development Ordinance, Chapter 2, Administration, Chapter 4, Use Standards, Chapter 5, Development Standards, Chapter 7, Environmental Protection, Chapter 9, Enforcement, and Chapter 10, Definitions and Measurements. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ms. LaCicero. Again, I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's before the board tonight is some cleanup language to the UDO. It clarifies some items, brings some consistency to a few other items, and I can work through those pretty quickly here if you'd like. The first item, it modifies the planning board appointments and brings the planning board membership to 7 regular members, 2 of which shall be at-large members. That language modifies there. This was done at the direction from the Board of Commissioners. I think at the retreat, we got some direction from the board to do that. So that is that language is clarified there. Are there any questions about that one before I move on? The next item, the text amendment, it corrects the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality is now NC DEQ instead of North Carolina Department of Environment and Natural Resources. DENR is what we call it for short, so we made that change throughout the UDO. So that's a very simple housekeeping one. Item 3, it corrects the appeal process for a notice of violation. If you get a notice of violation, as a property owner, you can appeal that in the language as it was written. You could also appeal a civil citation, and that was not the intent of that language, so we've cleaned that language up, so now you can only appeal the actual notice of a violation and not once you've been cited for a civil citation.
Ms. LaCicero, I actually have a question about that since you bring up the civil penalty. So if you issue a civil penalty to someone, there's no recourse on the individuals when they receive the penalty? Am I reading that right? Maybe I can clear that up a little bit.
Well, the process provided for in the UDO is that someone first receives a notice of violation.
Right.
And then failing to comply or conform with the requirements of the notice of violation, they could thereafter be subject to a civil citation. Mm-hmm. What has always been allowed and what will continue to be allowed is the individual can appeal the notice of violation, which is the first step prior to receiving a civil citation. So I think that would now be their opportunity for the appeal would be at the notice of violation stage prior to a civil citation typically ever being issued.
Okay. Thank you.
Item number 4 was something that came up as an issue for staff. When you have a lot that has frontage on dual roads, we have a concern about where to place the driveway, and this update says to place the driveway on the road with the lower traffic count. That's what we do for corner lots. That language is in there for corner lots, but not for a road that has this double frontage that has 2 accesses on right-of-ways. Item number 5.
Excuse me, item number 4. Mm-hmm. On driveways. So I have a house on 2 roads, or I have a road and it has 2. What address do they use? Do they use the same road address as the driveway, or do they use if they on the main road, or does it matter?
They would typically use where the driveway is. Okay. So that would be, and in this case, it would be going toward the road, the lesser traffic counts.
I asked that because with mailboxes and everything else being by the driveway. Okay, thank you.
Item number 5, it provides for additional community meetings when development proposals and applications result in substantial revisions, and this would be for items such as conditional rezonings, conditional use permits, subdivisions. This is after they've held the initial community meeting, gotten feedback from the area, their neighbors, and they come in and they make substantial changes, and that is defined in our UDO. They would then have to go back out and have another community meeting because that may change the project enough to sway their neighbors to have a different opinion of it. So that's item number 5. And item number 6 is including the number of bedrooms as a form of measurement for how we calculate our parking standards. So this is if there's a redevelopment of an area or additions or even a change of use in a room, that then the number of bedrooms would then can correlate to the number of parking spaces. So it basically sets up bedrooms as also a unit of measure when we're talking about parking spaces. Item number 7, it corrects language to be consistent with the model flood ordinance for mobile homes. This brings us into compliance with the state's model flood ordinance. The way our ordinance is written now, manufactured homes are not permitted in the ocean hazard zone, the VE zone of our flood ordinance. And this would allow for replacement of mobile homes. It wouldn't allow any new mobile homes in the flood zone, in the VE flood zone, but it would allow for replacement manufactured homes located in existing manufactured home parks and subdivisions. This brings us to compliance with the state's model flood ordinance. And the last one is a simple bringing things into compliance or changing letters. We've got a table that got a little bit out of whack with listing all the items in that table. We deleted an item and it didn't follow through. So this brings that table into compliance with the change of lettering. So, are there any questions on this?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion of,
It's a public hearing.
oh,
Sorry. No questions from the board? With that, I'll open a public hearing. We currently have no one signed up for the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak on behalf of this hearing? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and open the floor for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the amendment to modify and correct the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 2, Administration, Chapter 4, Use Standards, Chapter 5, Development Standards, Chapter 7, Environmental Protection, Chapter 9, Enforcement, and Chapter 10, Definitions and Measurements, as items 1 through 8 presented by staff.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to new business, an ordinance of the Currituck County Board of Commissioners amending Chapter 9, Article 1 of the Currituck County Code of Ordinances by adding Section 9-9 to allow the sale of malt beverages, unfortified wine, fortified wine, and mixed beverages on Sundays beginning at 10 a.m. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. McCree.
Mr. Chairman, on June 28th, the North Carolina General Assembly enacted legislation that was signed into law on June 30 by Governor Cooper that would allow for the sale of alcoholic beverages by retail establishments on Sunday mornings beginning at 10 o'clock a.m. The current law, of course, prohibits the sale of alcoholic beverages on Sunday prior to 12 o'clock noon. As provided in the legislation, it then is incumbent upon each city or county in the state to, by ordinance, allow for the service of malt beverages, unfortified wine, fortified wine, and mixed beverages within the boundaries of that jurisdiction beginning at 10 o'clock a.m. on Sundays. That's why the matter is before you tonight. What the legislation and this ordinance will not do is, first of all, allow for the opening of ABC stores. They will continue to remain closed on Sundays. So again, the only change will be to allow for restaurants, convenience stores, or other establishments that sell alcoholic beverages to do so at 10 o'clock a.m. On Sundays. I'm glad to answer any questions. Also want the board to understand that because this is the first reading of this ordinance under the general statutes, in order for it to be adopted tonight requires a unanimous vote of the board. If there is not a unanimous vote tonight, then the matter will be placed on your August 7th agenda for consideration, at which time it may be passed by a simple majority.
Thank you, Mr. McCree.
Mr. McCree, we had a discussion in reference to there is one section with the state that we have no control over. Can you explain that?
There is a provision, what we talked about, there's a provision in the legislation that allows for samples of alcoholic beverages to be distributed to the public by distilleries, brokers of distilleries, and other sales representatives. That would be pursuant to a state-issued license. It would allow for the sample of an alcoholic beverage if the state, if the company or individual representative receives the state permit. That would allow at street fairs, festivals, other type of similar events or activities for these companies within a designated area at the event to dispense to an individual no more than 1/4 ounce of alcoholic beverage at a time, not to exceed 1 ounce total for the entire day for that individual, and requires the permit holder to also keep some, there appears to be some pretty extensive records to be submitted to the state. Whether you adopt this ordinance or not would have no effect on the ability of distilleries or their brokers or sales representatives to obtain a state permit to do that in the county in any event.
Thank you.
That brings up a question, actually, we can say that. If we have a Sunday event, pick Bulls and Barbecue, just
Yeah.
because we had it here. This would open up, if we approved it, the ability to sell beer, wine at 10 o'clock at an event like that, or is that, do you know? They still got to get a permit, but it's kind of, it seems like gray, because you get a permit from from ABC to actually do the event, but are they governed by our laws? It's.
I think they would be allowed by this legislation and the ordinance, if adopted, to sell the alcoholic beverage to the consuming public. Of course, if it's on a county property, ultimately the county's policies or
Right.
ordinances regulating the use of the property and what may occur there would prevail over that.
Okay.
Any further questions, comments? Mr. Beaumont.
So, if you all will indulge me for a couple of minutes. It's ironic because aware that this issue was going to be coming before us this evening, that my cell phone went off on Sunday while in church to talk with me over this issue, and the person calling was, in support of it. So I found that to be interesting. So I'm going to ask some rhetorical questions just for us to consider. Why doesn't the state allow the ABC stores to be open on Sunday? Anyone know? I mean, I certainly don't. So I find it ironic that the state-sponsored mechanism by selling alcohol, they choose to close those, yet allow facilities within our county to be able to sell alcoholic beverages. I'm struck with the foundation of this country, and I believe the state of North Carolina was principally based on Judeo-Christian values. And as such, we recognize Sunday as a day of worship and prayer. We don't require that because that's clearly a violation of the Bill of Rights, and enforcing a religion upon our people. However, those values do still remain predominantly in the South, but especially in the state of North Carolina. When alcohol sales were opened up on Sundays, and again, I don't have the benefit of that background, but when they said, we're just going to start at noon and permit that, that 12 o'clock was set there for a reason. I'm pretty sure the majority of that reason was to be able to encourage people to go to church or encourage people to spend time with their families or whatever. And now we're being asked, or the burden being levied on us, that the state's not, and I agree, having the state involved in a lot of issues is problematic. But now all of a sudden it's up to us to open that door to 10 o'clock. And that begs the question, well, why 10? In fact, why should there be any restraint? So it feels to me like the state's playing on both sides of this path, or both sides of the railroad track or the road, and they're kind of standing in the middle of the road. And, I'm just, in listening to the testimony that came before us, and just so many of the things just strike me as that would give me cause for concern. As folks came before us, after a really long drive, I just want to get a couple of drinks and unwind prior to going to my house. No one, I don't believe anyone intentionally goes out and has a mishap, under a DUI or a DWI. I don't believe anyone intentionally falls asleep, runs off the road, and wraps themselves around a tree or kills some innocent person in the road coming in the opposite direction. I don't believe anybody purposes to do that. But we have constraints, not only in this county, but in this state and in this country, that attempts to take out, inadvertent consequences that impact the people around us. Likewise, we heard, people are, just checked out of their hotel, and they're stopping off at brunch, and we'd like to get something to drink before our long return home. The wisdom of that, I'm sorry, escapes me. I had a conversation with an individual that said, people arrive late at night, Saturday night, and, not realizing there's no alcohol sales before noon, show up at the grocery store in the morning to get, groceries and their beer so that they can get to the beach, and find out that they can't buy alcohol prior to noon. Poor planning on your part does not necessitate an emergency on our part. Listening to the testimony about the surveys, and certainly I didn't have time to read through all of them, or actually many of them. But did anyone say they were never coming back to Currituck County because they couldn't get I almost said a Molotov cocktail, but they were, before noon on Sunday, and I don't believe that that's the case. I think people respect municipalities, and to be frank, anyone that's upset about that policy, if that's their excuse for not coming back, we've had discussions in this county with the tourism board about how, the family environment that we're trying to encourage in Corolla and Currituck County, how, that feels at times threatened by the demographics that appear to be changing. I think the way things are just fine, and clearly, anybody that would suggest that there would not be alcohol sales at 10 o'clock between the hours of 10 and 12, that in fact businesses are losing out on revenue because of alcohol sales. Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that. Clearly there's going to be increased revenue by the sales, but we don't necessarily govern by what makes a profit for people. I don't think this is being an obstructionist. I'm not sure I believe that businesses are going to close down because they couldn't sell alcohol for 2 hours on Sundays during the brief window. And I have significant reservations about opening this door, So.
Thank you, Mr. Beaumont.
In reference to comments from Mr. Bowman, I agree with many of them. 31 years law enforcement. How many times did I ever work an accident? Somebody coming from the brunch or lunch that they had before noon. I can't remember a single time. I'm sure there may have been one. I actually was on the team many times to reconstruct accidents. Most accidents on Sunday morning or on Sunday afternoon or deaths that were alcohol related were from the night before at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. They weren't from those folks coming at 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I can remember as a child, we were going out to brunch right after church, and they want to sit there and have a Bloody Mary, whatever it is, and they enjoyed it. We still went back to those same restaurants, whether they sold them or not. I can remember the blue law where you couldn't open up anything, and you had to take and choose carefully where you went or what you did. We're a tourist town. I truly believe that convenience is everything because we have people coming from all over the country. I believe 47 states already allow it. I also looked into the fact of what our state said, and there's an exception that they already have in the ABC law where they can give it away, you just can't sell it. So, those brought a lot of concerns on my part, and realized that sometimes we have to give the individual a chance to make their own decision. Convenience, whatever it might be, not necessarily profit. Profit should be one of the lower things, but we are a tourist town, so profit is in there. People want to get out of traffic. They don't want to sit in a line, so they figure, well, let me do my grocery shopping. They don't want to come out twice, because coming out twice sometimes is a really pain in the butt thing to do. They want to get to their place. That doesn't mean they're going to drink it, but they're at the grocery store. And again, it's convenience. When they're spending several $100s worth of food, and then they got to come back out later to get their $8 six-pack or whatever it might be, I want to make it easy for them because, again, we are tourist-driven. Not that they're going to go somewhere else, but I want them to have every chance to be a positive thing. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
I would argue that I bet these same discussions were had when we put liquor drinks in businesses in 17, 18 years ago, I guess, when they changed rules. I was like 27, didn't really care what was going on at the commissioners back at the time, but I know for a fact for the businesses in my district anyway on the beach that they have 120 days if we don't have a storm to make a living, and it is going to impact them, or maybe make it for a struggling business, make them profitable or a little bit more profitable. So I just I know for our businesses over there and here, many of these individuals also give back to the community. I mean, how many events does John Wright do for us that does stuff, fundraisers, whatever, things we go to. One of my friends, Tony from Ike's, was supposed to be here but had oral surgery today, but he does fundraisers for the fire department and matches everything that he takes in that night and goes to the fire department. So, that doesn't make these bad individuals because this is going on. So I would just like to just pass this and help those businesses out.
I personally am not in favor of moving it to 10 o'clock, but I also was elected to represent what my constituents want. And I've had two people who have contacted me who are not in favor of it. And I've had several people who have contacted me who are in favor of it. So it's not, I don't feel like I can vote just because I'm not in favor of it, when there are people that it will affect and it will help their businesses. And when I ran, I said I was for small businesses, and when they have contacted me and they feel like it will help them, I certainly feel like we should do everything we can to help the small businesses here in the county.
Thank you, Ms. Etheridge.
I'll make a comment as well. I thought about it for a long time. I grew up in this county as well, too, and I've heard a lot from a lot of people here. Yes, I did, Paul, believe it or not. Yes, I was in the band, too. And there's been a lot of good points made. The individual businesses still have a choice whether they want to sell it at 10 o'clock or not. I do believe that if somebody really wants to drink early in the morning, they're already going to have their alcohol on hand. 10 o'clock is not going to sway me to drink, whether 12 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I'm still not going to drink on Sunday morning. But that doesn't mean that individuals have a right to make their own decisions out there. The businesses can help them. A lot of people shop early in the morning. A lot of good comments. People, the marinas. People shop and stock their boats up for a week, 2 weeks, months trips. Again, it's the choice. If marinas want to sell it at 10, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to. Thought about it for a lot, and I just want to make some comments out there.
Oh, and I kind of concur with all the comments that have been made, and too, like Miss Etheridge was elected to represent the people, and I've had one person contact me not in favor, and I've had a tremendous amount of people in favor of it, and more of the retail side versus the consumption at 10 o'clock. So being able to purchase, stopping by Sanctuary Vineyards, buying a case of local wine, supporting the local businesses on their way back home, that's kind of where I'm torn between both. And with, like I said, I was elected by the people, and the majority of the people that have contacted me have been in favor of changing the time to 10 o'clock. So.
Everyone here stole something I was going to say, so I don't have a comment. Any further comments, discussion? With that, I'll open a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the ordinance as presented.
I will second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
We have one nay. The motion does not pass. It will be moved on to the August.
Well, actually, the motion did pass its first reading,
Right,
but it
it did
required
pass first reading.
unanimity, so it will be placed on your August 7th meeting for its second reading, at which time it may pass by a simple majority vote.
Thank you. Moving on to board appointments. Library Board of Trustees.
Yes, I had an appointment for Ms. Carrie Angley. She's a resident of Corova and is actively involved in the committee, and I think would make a great addition.
We can do them together, or
We can do them together, it's fine. And Senior Citizen Advisory Board.
well, Mike Hall has one on the library board.
I'll do that at my next meeting. I've narrowed it down to several people.
Prepared for that. Senior Citizen Advisory Board.
I'd like to nominate David Myers.
I'll open the floor for a motion.
A motion for acceptance of those nominations or appointments.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Motion for approval.
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to Commissioners' Report. Mr. Hall?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. White?
Nothing for me either this evening.
Ms. Gilbert?
Nothing this evening.
Mr. Beaumont?
Why, yes, I do.
All right.
So, many of, in fact, most of you all probably know, but I had the opportunity yesterday to take my son down to be shipped off to the U.S. Marine Corps to begin boot camp
Hoorah.
tomorrow. So I think even now he's on the road. And he went with another Currituck County High School graduate, Wade Fallon. And, as I sat around and I looked at the young men that have volunteered to serve our country, it's something that I believe is intrinsic upon us to certainly keep them in your thoughts, keep them in your prayers, because it's the beginning of a life of sacrifice, or at least a season of sacrifice, by which it's those kids that give us the right to meet here. It's those kids that give us the right to go, if passed, buy an alcoholic beverage at 10 o'clock on Sunday. But I say that, and some of those kids will ultimately give up the ultimate sacrifice so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we have. So, it was sobering to me. Proud of them on one hand, and had to deal with the emotional trauma of watching him go off. So all I can say is I do pray for him and can't wait for graduation. That's it.
Ms. Etheridge? Mr. Payment?
Nothing for myself either.
I have nothing this evening. County Manager's Report?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay, and with that, I will recess the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners and move to enter closed session pursuant to GS 143-318-11A3 to consult with the county attorney and in order to preserve the county-client privilege. Thank you.